Hello friends, welcome. Friends, you might have seen this article today in the newspaper which talks about India sets to join quantum satellite race for hack-proof communication network. Now friends, many of us have heard about hack-proofing communication network, encryption, various kinds of communication channels, satellite, optical fiber, etc. Now, in this headline, you will notice that the emphasis has been laid on two terms, hack proof and communication network. That is crucial. And the communication network, which is preferred in this means of communication, and the emphasis has been laid, is on satellite. Now, you might be surprised. Satellite communication networks suffer from various flaws. You know that the bandwidth is quite limited. They are moving at fast speeds, therefore you have to deal with a lot of challenges like Doppler effect, etc. And then these are located high above the surface of the earth, and therefore there is a possibility of delay, which typically does not happen in case of terrestrial network, which are not that far away and they are regenerated at every point as we move across from one point to another point. So the delays in case of conventional systems are pretty less compared to satellites. So we know that satellites suffer from a lot of problems. But still, we are emphasizing satellite based network for an hack-proof communication network, and that is what I am going to explain in this video. So I am going to break this concept as to why satellite for an hack-proof communication network. Now, before I take you through the concept, I would like to explain to you how a conventional communication network works and what is being talked about in this article, which India is trying to do. Now, this is a chart of a typical conventional secure communication network. So you can see here a point A or a person A trying to communicate to B over a channel which is public channel, right, which is internet. And they can be spread apart by thousands of kilometers, right? So there is a distance of thousands of kilometers between A and B, and they are trying to communicate so that anybody in between who is an eavesdropper cannot listen to their communication, understand what they're talking about. So what are the steps involved? Let's understand. The steps that are involved is remote exchange of key using the public channel, so that even when an eavesdropper who is listening to the channel, when the key exchange is happening, for him or her, this key is going to be useless. That's very, very important because there has to be a key exchange. Without key exchange, the communication cannot start between A and B, right? So that's the key mandatory requirement. Then what is the next step? Whatever key that is getting exchanged has to be a public key. Means anybody listening into the communication, when he gets access to the public key, he will not be able to decrypt that information. The public key can't be used to decrypt the message. That's the second important ingredient in this communication. Third important thing is that decryption of message can only happen using a private key. It can't happen using a public key. So, after having understood these three steps, let's do a role play. A is trying to communicate to B, right? That is, B is the recipient and A is transmitting the message. So what will happen? What are the steps involved? B will transmit immediately a public key to A, saying that, oh A, you want to transmit a message to me? Here is my public key. B will say, here is my public key, use that public key to encrypt the message. So what A will do? A will take the public key of B and encrypt the signal, lock the signal and send that to the unsecure communication channel. Now, in between, a guy whose name is C, is eavesdropping. So when B is sending that public key over this unsecured channel, C is available. C knows that the information is being sent. He has the access to the public key which of B, but information which is being sent by A, by encrypting the signal or encrypting the message using the public key of B, even when it is available to C, C will not be able to decrypt the information. That's the crucial part of a conventional secure communication channel. So this is very important to understand. So what happens is that once the information is sent by A using the public key of B, then when B receives this message, he will be able to decrypt that message using his private key, which is known to only him or her. Nobody knows about the private key, even C doesn't know the private key. That's how a conventional communication channel works. The key exchange becomes very simple, which is being done using a mechanism where public key and private key are two different numbers. Public key is used to encrypt the message, private key is able to use to decrypt the message, and private key is only known to the party who is receiving the message. Public key is being known to everyone inside the system who is trying to send message to B, right? So B makes his public key available to everybody, right? Now, in a quantum system, so let's look at what happens in a quantum system. Now, how quantum systems are different from conventional system. Now, in case of quantum system, there is again A, there is again B. Both are trying to communicate with each other and they are spread apart by thousands of kilometers. Again, we have an eavesdropper in between, right? So let's look at the steps involved. So there are 3 steps involved as in case of conventional system. First, we have to do remote exchange of key using the public channel with eavesdropper in between. So we have to have a mechanism so that the information can be transmitted of the keys to both A and B, so that both of them can encrypt and decrypt the message. Here there is no concept of public key and private key. What happens is that key exchange is a protocol which has been discovered, invented by in case of quantum communication, where when the information is being sent using a key exchange is happening between two parties using a public channel which is available to an eavesdropper, then also the eavesdropper will not be able to intercept the message and will be able to understand what information is being sent to A and B. So the key exchange is secure and safe without eavesdropper able to intercept and get access to the mechanism. Now you may ask how. Now this is mathematically quite overwhelming, I would say very complex and challenging. Therefore I will not get into that concept of how key exchange happens without C able to understand what is being exchanged. But one thing you like to understand, and which I would like to basically emphasize here, is that the main concept on which this whole communication, quantum communication is based using quantum key distribution mechanism, right, is that if at any moment of time where A is trying to transmit to B, if there is an eavesdropper in between who is listening to the communication between A and B, then the messages that C is receiving, right, when it is getting transmitted to A and B, the presence of C listening to the conversation between A and B is known to both the parties A and B. They will come to know that C is there listening to the message, which is unlike the case in case of conventional system, and where if anybody is listening to the communication between A and B using a conventional system, both A and B will not come to know that there is an eavesdropper. Though eavesdropper normally will not be able to break into the message, but they will not come to know their presence. But in case of a quantum system, that is where the difference between a classical system and a conventional system is that if an eavesdropper is listening to the message, then both of them will come to know that there is an eavesdropper and they will take precautionary action. They will discard those bits or retransmit using different type of error correction, because message loses meaning as soon as they are read. That is the characteristics of a quantum principle. If you read the message, you destroy the message, then the message loses meaning. Okay. Now let's come back to the story. Why satellite? Why not use a conventional optical fiber system to do the same thing which we are trying to do in case of a classical system, right? That is where the main point of discussion was in the beginning. Now what happens is that when you are transmitting information using a quantum system, let's understand the difference between a classical system and a quantum system. In case of classical system, you are sending ones and zero in digital form, right? So there will be digits of ones and zero being sent, right, over a conventional channel. Now these ones and zeros will have states which are high in voltage and low in voltage, right? So there could be repeaters in between who will be able to repeat that signal, right? Because as the signal travels from one point to another, it will be laced with noise. The noise will get entangled into the system and the system has to be regenerated by a repeater in between, right? This is typically a conventional system. You might have seen that microwave, there are repeater, optical fiber, there are repeater. These repeaters are digital system and they repeat the signal faithfully and retransmits it into the line so that eventually it reaches B. Now since a classical system, the presence of eavesdropper does not matter. It matters, but it is not known to A and B. So we have to live with an eavesdropper in between who has access to all information. So we pray to God that the eavesdropper is not able to break to the system, because there are possibilities that with high computing power, with brute force techniques, that the message can be decrypted. There is a possibility, right? So we have to live with that risk. So we don't care. We regenerate the signal as the signal transmits within the line, because otherwise the signal will lose intelligence as it transmitted thus far. Means it's thousands of kilometers you cannot transmit in one single leg, right? So this is a typical conventional system. Now in a quantum system, the problem is that if you are going to use the same optical fiber network to transmit a quantum system, you will face problems. And let me explain why this problem you are going to face when you transmit using an optical fiber system. Now, as I told you, in case of a quantum system, if you are going to read the message in between, right, using a classical regenerator, the message is going to lose intelligence and you will never be able to retransmit the message to the other point, to the receiver. So you can't have repeaters in between in case of quantum system, right? Though there are possibility of quantum repeaters which are being developed right now, but those are going to be a far away in time, not really ready. So you can't use classical repeaters in between. Now when you are transmitting this signal using an optical fiber system, the quantum signal using an optical fiber system, what happens is that whoever is conversant with optical fiber system, they will know that when light travels in an optical fiber strand, the transmission of the light is affected by the density of the medium. The density of the medium is never uniform. So different paths of light will actually face different type of delays. So you will find that this particular path will have a different delay and the blue one will have a different delay. So what will happen at the point of reception, there will be a lot of garbage. The signal is basically going to lose, fidelity, and therefore repeaters are needed in between in order to regenerate the signal before it loses complete intelligence. So that is the typical problem of conventional optical fiber system. So whether you are using a classical system or whether you are using a quantum system, it does not matter, because at the end of the day you have to basically transmit light, right? And the light is going to have dispersion, and dispersion is going to cause this problem. The signal will lose intelligence and you have to use repeaters in between. You cannot do away with repeaters. So if you are going to transmit, let's say if you are basically in a typical OFC system, if you are transmitting from one point to another point, let's say in a typical OFC system, then what happens is that, let me take my pen again. So let me just take the pen again. Yeah. So here is my conventional system, typical OS system with so many regenerators in between required. So if you are going to have these points in a quantum system, these are vulnerable points where signal can be tampered with, and the B and A will not come to know, because if you are going to use a classical system with for regeneration, then the presence of the eavesdropper in between cannot be known to A and B, as I told you earlier. So you can't have a classical system here. So you need to have a quantum system for regeneration. And that is why optical fiber system can't be used for transmission of quantum encrypted messages, because these messages needs to be regenerated after a duration of 250 kilometers, maximum. It can't transmit using an optical fiber system. That is why we are basically talking about satellite system. Why satellite? Because in satellite, the transmission is happening in free space, 600 to 1200 kilometers without any repeater in between. So the fidelity of the information being transmitted from point A to point B is getting transmitted only with satellite in between. There are no repeaters in between, and that is why the signal remains intelligent, quantumly intelligent between point A to B. And if there is an eavesdropping which is happening in between, both A and B will come to know, because there are no repeaters, digital repeaters in between, where if there is a penetration, then you will not come to know that A and B, or will not come to know that there is somebody who is eavesdropping in between. Now, in case of the summary, let me just summarize and end this particular presentation. The summary is that in conventional system, eavesdropping is possible. And the eavesdropper can get access to metadata, because metadata is not encrypted. And that metadata itself is going to give us a lot of insight as to lot of attacks are possible when you get access to metadata. So conventional system, there is a problem, and presence of eavesdropper cannot be detected. So anybody is listening to that, you will not know, somebody is listening. Whereas in a quantum system, eavesdropping is not possible, because anybody interjecting into the message, if he is trying to read the message will lose intelligence. That is why metadata will become inaccessible. Eavesdropper presence is detectable. Optical fiber system require vulnerable repeaters. Those have to be quantum repeaters to make them non-vulnerable, but those are going to be very costly and very, very difficult to maintain. That is why satellite-based system provides a secure communication in a situation where you do not want eavesdropper in between, you do not want metadata to get accessible, and you want a end-to-end secure communication where any tampering which happens in between can be easily known to both the transmitter and the recipient, and they can take corrective action. So I hope, friends, you probably understood. And in the end, I would like to just mention that I wrote an article. I'm going to share the link of this article with this video. And if you are interested, you can just read this article. You can get a very good, nice summary of this concept. And this I wanted to do in a very simple manner without getting into mathematical jargon, and hope I probably have understood. And I'll come back with, and thanks for listening till the end. I'll come back with a new video next time. Thank you very much.